All right. Looks like we got a good population. Thanks everyone for joining today. As always, we appreciate your engagement with the cooperative. Rao, are you ready with the technical update?
Yes, I am. So there is not, let me just move this so that it's out of the way. So there's not any change on the status of the networks. Welcome to Community Update 211. The work on LLBM is proceeding. Basically, NetZipper is working on the next LLBM version, and Tomislav is reviewing what he's doing, what NetZipper is doing. There are basically three more things that need to be done in the LLBM code. One is to correct the bug in the logic working through the merging and finalization. NetZipper had flattened out the order of justifications, but the order of justifications need to be preserved. So he is going to correct that and basically merge the conflict set into pre-state as it was before. That's relatively straightforward to do. The other couple of things that he's working on are looking into the optimal way of handling attestations so that we can get some improved performance when there is not as much traffic on the network. And then the creating and supporting unmerge the provisional finalization. So those are the pieces that he's working on, and Tomislav also is kind of there in constant communication to make sure that whatever is coming out is logical and reasonable. So because the LLBM situation is quite dynamic in terms of what kind of situations may arise, we have the simulator as the basic way to test the various cases in the merge. Stas has been working on, Tomislav created the basic simulator and Stas is adding functionality to it. He has a PR 3599, which basically checks the consistency of the finalization fringes as finalization moves forward. And in addition to creating additional functionality on the simulator, he's also helping with actually testing the LLBM code on the simulator. There is in particular a test called the infinite test that can run basically forever. But the idea with the test is to continuously generate all kinds of DAG progression scenarios. And if an inconsistent state is detected during that process, the test prints out the fact that something inconsistent has been detected, and it prints out the current finalization fringes of all the senders. So that's, in fact, on the current code, I think Stas has just started that now, and probably by tomorrow we'll see if there is anything detected. That's what tells us if there is any bugs. So the longer it goes on without reporting anything, the more confident we are about the correctness of the code. That's what we're doing there. Dennis has captured the performance improvements from the radix tree-based history implementation in the issue 3596 as a public record. So folks can take a look at that. We presented that in the past in the debrief, or Dennis presented that. So it's the same data that's captured in there, but it's there for you to compare the pre and post, the previous version of history versus the radix tree-based version of history. In terms of actually merging his thing, there was a robust review of his PR. So there are some comments on there that he's working to improve the code quality. The code is working and actually already had been deployed in the LLBM code before. It's just that it's more about code quality type of things that he's improving at this point in time. Tomislav has been reviewing a lot of the PRs. There's a bunch of activity going on from multiple angles, and he's also guiding the team members. And then I already talked to the work he was doing with NetZipper on the LLBM review. In addition, he had been looking into the performance of the primitive operations in Golang. There is one implementation for, I think, a couple of quick hits there that he has implemented, but those are not tested or anything like that. So at this time, we will determine the release schedule for those after the performance tests, as well as other tests with those changes. The intention is to basically release whatever we can as part of the hard fork 2 and or hard fork 2 and LLBM release. Will is also correcting his PRs based on the reviews. And the one other task he's working on is making sure that the ability to record transactions on chain is working properly. He may have to do some tests there, and that's what he's working on. Rev-defined, Will and Gurinder had been working on getting Rev-defined to work on testnet. It is now working on testnet. So the link, the URL is here, revdefined.testnet.rchain.coop, to basically get the same Rev-defined functionality you have on the mainnet also on the testnet. So that may be very helpful for developers as they deploy dApps on the testnet. There is another improvement in the area of monitoring and spitting out the log data and other performance metrics in a easy to access method or easy to access manner, and that is using InfluxDB and the Telegraph component to be able to serve that data out. So Gurinder is working on enabling those two pieces on the testnet so that everybody can get access to the kind of monitoring data that you would typically want when you are working through developing dApps. And in general, this is also going to be part of the methodology when we put out more testnets, either for external clients or other shards and so on and so forth. So that's one part of that. In addition to what is already there in the logs and being able to enable the push that out to InfluxDB and through to Telegraph. The development team in future, once they have some time, will be adding more code to create more events in the code base, so that pretty much everything you want to know about what's going on the blockchain, you would be able to receive that, whether it's from the standpoint of debugging your code or other things. So all of that, whether you want to do performance tests on your particular use case, that kind of information should be available in the influx data and Telegraph methodology, so that it's easy for people to use the platform. InfluxDB basically gives you the ability to write your own queries. So there are a bunch of standard connectors that Telegraph supports. And where that is not the case, you can basically write your own queries on top of influx data and then get whatever information you need in whatever format you need. So that's one of the things that we're improving there. And the other thing that's going on is supporting external customers, whether it's in the form of putting proposals or reviewing architectures or figuring out what makes sense for them to put on the blockchain and not. All this work that we're doing with them will be feeding into the roadmap for RChain. Basically, one of the key areas of focus for RChain in 2022 is market acceptance and adoption of the platform. So whatever we discover in our conversations with people that are using or wanting to use RChain in their respective dApps, we're going to figure out what kind of features would make things easy for them, what kind of performance improvements are important to them, and then basically bake them into the roadmap. So that's going to be a substantial part of the 2022 roadmap. And we'll be updating the roadmap as we do that discovery or engagement with actual use cases with people wanting to implement their business scenarios on top of RChain. So that's part of the activity. The rest here is just there as a reminder. People that are making wallets need to be prepared to receive the minimum flow price as a parameter using this API call. So that because that's going to be released out soon. So if you are using any wallets or know any wallet makers, please let them know about this. That, I think, is the core of my update for today. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Rao, maybe I misunderstood when we were talking with Anton this morning. My understanding was that he has a version which doesn't flatten the justifications on the
Correct.
simulator. Yeah.
What he needs to do is basically take the code from there and merge it with his current version of the code.
Yeah.
And test it, make sure that because this is how it was before. Before it was not flattening, but now that he has changed other things, he wants to make sure that he gets the picks that piece and puts in here and test. So that's why it's it should be a relatively straightforward thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, just to provide a little color to the community. Currently, what makes it so dynamic is that we're trying to make sure that we get, a reasonable swag at optimal early on. I mean, we're not trying to optimize before we release, but we want it to be, in the ballpark. And so there are essentially two ways to go about the treatment of partitions. You can either wait for partitions, wait on the recognizing of a partition until you are certain that you have a partition which is includes a supermajority, or you can form partitions early and then you build up and then you build up a partition that has a supermajority by sort of merging the two partitions. So those are the two approaches. One is pessimistic in terms of partition formation, but it will cause these kind of this chunky behavior with respect to merging. The other one, the merging will happen more frequently, but it means that sometimes you have to undo work. And so basically the trade-off is either you do a forward speculative work and then have to undo some of that, or you delay and you do less speculative work, but it takes you, but you take the hit on the complexity of the merge at the time that you do the merge. So that's the trade-off, and either one, they're basically two flavors of the same algorithm. You can think of them as eager versus lazy forms of the same algorithm, and we're just trying to we're arguing through which one is sort of gives best performance results given the domain that we've got. And so what we're really doing is implementing both, and then we'll be running both through the simulator, but we'll get one of them out first to testnet. But we'll try them against each other. We'll pit them off against each other just to make sure that we've got one that is provably more optimal in the usage patterns that we're seeing on chain. Hopefully that makes sense to folks.
This suggests that in a different hardware environment or a different network configuration, that one might work better than the other. Oh
yeah, for sure. Well, mostly.
So to finish my question, if we were to change the underlying hardware that we're running RChain on, that we would have to go through this sequence of tests again.
No. We're definitely going to provide testing for both sides, and then they will be the predominant impact is not the hardware. I mean, hardware could make a difference, but mostly what will make a difference is usage pattern of the network. So that's the dominant factor on whether delay, the delayed gratification versus, the lazy version versus the eager version is going to be.
So is there a contingency in the future to switch between the two different
Yeah,
flavors?
yeah.
Algorithm?
Yeah, in fact, it is totally reasonable, to have, one shard running one and another shard running another. There's no problems with either algorithm. In fact, we fully anticipate that RChain will have heterogeneous networks in the not too distant future. Right, that's a part of what makes going to decentralization such an interesting and fun proposition. Because very, very soon you start to get these heterogeneous networks where you have different validators running different versions of the protocol, and you have to make sure that they're all compatible.
That answers my question.
Sure. Any other questions for Rao or? Yeah.
I do have a question about bullet point number 2. Can I have a better understanding perhaps of what the infinite test is?
It just basically generates various combinations of DAGs and the progression sequences through finalization in a random manner. And so it runs through them one after the other, and sees if there is at any point, there's inconsistency in the state. And if there is, then it kind of flags that out.
I mean, I haven't talked to Tomislav or the team about this specific test, but I have frequently encouraged them to use just a second fiber frequently encourage them to use stream-based test generation. So you generate an infinite stream of tests, and then you explore the stream to whatever depth you want to. And if you do it that way, and if you do it in such a way that the stream is deterministically generated from a seed, then you can always do a repro, because you know what the seed is, and you know what the place in the stream is that got you the error. So this is a great methodology.
Am I correct that this test is similar to testing algorithms on floating point numbers, in as much as it needs to be repeatable, but it also needs to be random?
As far as I know, this is not about floating point numbers. It's about the shape of the DAG.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
Has any consideration been given to use GraphQL with FluxDB? It's been suggested that will help prevent over or under reading of data, and the GraphQL tooling allows things like the Explorer and caching, and the typing system of GraphQL adds value, from what I understand.
I mean,
So Jim, you're talking about basically taking the data into InfluxDB, but then using GraphQL as a layer on top of that to be able to connect to whatever you want to connect to, something along those lines. Is that what you?
Yeah, I put a link in the chat. I mean, you can use the Flux queries along with the GraphQL queries if you want to. So it gives.
So this piece of that, the way we're currently thinking about that is that this is more a user convenience or user option as to whatever they want to do. We are using the Telegraph because that's a component that's already, it comes packaged with InfluxDB. So that's the easiest way for us to deploy this for now, where we can see what's in the InfluxDB. But certainly both either custom queries or GraphQL queries or whatever it is that you want to do on top of InfluxDB is something you can do in a particular deployment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
the other attraction is that the GraphQL unifies all your data sources, not just the InfluxDB in terms of queries and such.
That is correct. So like if you're doing this in a production deployment where, let's say in an enterprise environment, somehow this needs to connect with or be reported along with other bunch of things, that architecture certainly makes sense. In our case, though, at this point in time, it's basically all there is InfluxDB. We don't have anything else.
Well,
So
we have Rolang, right?
yeah,
We have the chain itself that we can access with GraphQL.
oh, I see. So that's something we have not explored as to what can or should be done there. But that's what I mean. But that sounds more like a community project, right? I mean, you can do it and report back as to what the good and bad is, or anybody in the community can do that, because the InfluxDB piece gives you some part of the data. And then, like you said, there is the blockchain. So if you want to combine the two and do something interesting, certainly that's a possibility. So it's available basically. We got the first piece in here. I think that's the easiest thing to do. We'll see what GraphQL will add to that and what kind of use cases may be delivered off of that. We have not explored that part at this time.
Yeah, I have something to add. So now that there is an additional API, like for this minimum flow price, I think you actually need to do like several requests before you can actually do a deploy. So it wouldn't be nice to kind of have a use GraphQL to kind of get the minimum flow price and maybe block number at once, rather than using two API endpoints.
So yeah, we'll take that into consideration. And we also have the tech governance meeting. We should have the tech governance meeting one of these days, so we can certainly discuss that over there to see what we need to do there. So
My suggestion is that, the status call, API call should return both, in addition to the information it already returns.
Wait,
both being what? Both
The last block and the flow price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like there should be one API to get both, in addition to each being separate.
yeah, sure.
So what you guys are suggesting is a change to the current API call, right? The one that is only giving you the minimum flow price. You want that to be, so that's.
Yeah, but in order to prevent, in order to be, the minimal disruption would be separating them and also providing one that provides both.
Correct. Yeah, we can do it that way. We add one more call that does both.
Well, you had two calls, one which just gives you the flow price and one which gives you both.
Yeah, the one that just gives the flow price is already there.
Okay.
And we can add one more that gives you both the block number and the flow price.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we can certainly create an issue for that in there. I can create one, or if you guys want to create, that's fine too. And then we'll take it from there.
Very good.
Please do.
Any other comments? All right. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you very much. Good discussion. Daryl, are you ready with the week in review?
Sure. Hey, everybody. So here's the week in review for February 10th to February 16th. Last Thursday in the work study, they did rgov live coding trust metric group.row. On Friday at the Climate Coordination RCast, they started by discussing whether a love of nature is hereditary, the fact that 15% of coastlines worldwide are ecologically intact, and a Sierra Club petition to cancel a new Bitcoin mining project in New York State. Steve Ross Talbot joined the group and talked about a failed NFT project by the World Wildlife Fund due to its climate concerns, as well as the layer 1 versus layer 2 energy usage. Let's see now. I don't have anything for the Casper stand-up on Monday, Greg. Can you fill us in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Why don't you cover everything else and then I'll go Casper at the end.
Okay. So yesterday in the communications working group, we discussed goosing up our climate change focus to the media and the world in general. We discussed how we can get neutral third-party confirmation of the environmental tech advantage that RChain has. And I'd just like to say thanks to Alan T on Discord for your contributions in that regard. We also discussed preparing materials for the summit in Paris in the spring. Also yesterday in the DApp developer work group study, they did a review of Bootstrap CLI. And this morning in the RChain active member hangout, we discussed how to optimize our presence at the Paris Blockchain Week Summit in April. We also discussed Bill's impressively lofty plans with his perpetually growing aquarium. And Jim introduced us to his sailboat bucket list dream. And then near the end, Theo described his Factor application some more. And we decided that next week we're going to discuss how the trust metrics of such an application could work. And that brings us to now.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions for Daryl? Okay. I will quickly do a screen share and just summarize what's going on with Casper. So hopefully people can see my screen.
Oh my God.
Yes.
just so people understand what Casper is on about. So what we are talking about is here is a spec for the core of the row, the two-level type decomposition of the row calculus, or this core of Rolang. Here's a notion of a collection, and so in this case the collection is a tree, and then what this is the output. So all this stuff from here down to here is the output of the algorithm to generate a type system for this system, using this as the notion of collection for witnesses. And what we covered was an elaboration of the collection side of the type system, and how we will tie the recursive knot between the collection and the core language constructors. So this is the structural types. These are the types for the collection itself, the type operators for the collection. And this is about tying the recursive knot between the two. And then over here, we have an example of using the type system to show that the zero process is in fact in a non-empty collection containing zero. So one of the things that's really interesting about this particular collection type, just so that people get a sense of it, you can use the collection type to implement a safe queue or stack operations. So we know that it would be an error to try to pop something off of an empty stack, right? That shouldn't be allowed. And the question is, do you want to detect that at runtime or at compile time? And this system allows for compile time checks that you're always safe if you were to do a pop operation. So you can detect those kinds of things at the type level. So this is the sort of thing that it becomes available once you have different notions of collections other than set. You know, I've focused a lot on, maybe someone wants to mute. Maybe someone wants to mute. So emphasize the linear collections because we know that linear logic is also has some important properties. And so using linear as the collection notion is useful. But this example shows that just ordinary structured sets like trees also gives you important and interesting properties when used as the collection. And so here's an example. There are lots and lots more, but the main point is that we're kind of, nearing the end of the research phase. So we're now giving crisp examples of here's the input, here's the output that can then be used by developers to do the implementation of OSLF with, say, Scala plus Kiama as an example of the starting point for the base coding layer. So that's essentially what the Casper stand-up was talking about.
Is this an example of behavioral types? I guess it is.
Yeah. So this is just the structural part. To get the behavioral part, you have to do this extra stuff. So you start with this as your initial gadget, but this has no behavior in it, right? This is just the structural part. Then you modify this to this. All right, so the collection remains constant in this modification, so it's not repeated. So you go from here to here, and this will be what I'll talk about in Casper next week. But essentially, you're adding the reductions as a part of the theory. So you start with a higher order algebraic theory, and then you go from the higher order algebraic theory. In this case, we're only using a Levier theory, but if you want to treat this as if it were a function type or a lambda-like gadget, then you'd use a higher order algebraic theory. So you go from there to this modified version where you have the reductions in place, and then this tells you what the reductions are. So you have a source and a target, right? So source and target, that's these two here. And then you have some equations which say what the source of a eval p. So this is eval, this is com, and this is par. So eval basically does this. The eval of p is the source of that is star at, and target of eval of p is just p. So you're collapsing the star at relationship. And then over here, and by the way, I insisted that Mike and Christian provide a proof that this approach to rho yields the same semantics as the approach that I used in the original paper. So we have a proof that the two presentations are equivalent. And then this is the usual COM thing. So the source of a COM gadget is your usual, you've got a 4 comprehension bumping up against an output on the same channel. And then the target is that you do this, you give P back with this substitution in place, right? So this is just the usual COM rule, but now you have a notion of source and target that are available here, and then par is just driving if you have a par of a reduction in a process, right? So that means that this thing can potentially reduce. Then the source of this is the source of the reduction, and the target is the target of the reduction. So that gives you that, and then you can use these to drive the modal formulae, and I'll talk about how that's done on Monday. So this is super cool, right? So now we're in the home stretch where we're generating the types using using whatever kind of collection that you want, and getting usable, cool type systems that allow us to prove cool formulae.
So basically you did this with sets. and
Yeah,
that-
the original.
now-
Yeah. So doing it with I did it by hand with sets for namespace logic. Then Christian and Mike did it categorically with sets for a much wider range of phenomena. And now we've gone beyond sets to whatever your collections are here.
Now, would that apply to non-well-founded sets, or do we do that more like this?
You could use non-well-founded sets. Yeah, I don't think that I'm pretty sure that non-well-founded sets forms a topos. So you can certainly use non-well-founded sets using Christian and Mike's algorithm from last year.
All right,
So-
thank you.
Yeah, sure. Cool. Sorry to take so long on that, but I think this stuff is the cat's meow. Okay, so board meeting, a special board meeting. Largely, we spend a great deal of time talking about fundraising options. No votes were taken, but we have done. It was all informational, primarily about fundraising. There was a request from the co-op to Dazzle that Dazzle provides the vesting schedule for the equity and token payouts that would go to principals and founders for Dazzle. RPC has already provided that, and Dazzle has not yet provided it, but will do so this week. And then the other thing that we discussed, and it was quite wonderful. We Daryl found the guy who literally wrote the book on LCAs. So for a reminder, limited cooperative associations, LCAs, that's the corporate structure that we're converting Dazzle and RPC to. We have addressed all of the comments from Evan Jensen on the bylaws for RPC, and so we're in the process of formally getting the conversion for RPC from a social purpose corporation to an LCA. And we want to make sure that we have all the paperwork in place to be able to process equity investment, as well as to make tokens available to members. So with that, we'll need some oversight from a council that is familiar with LCAs. And so we spoke yesterday with Michael Droke, who wrote the book on LCAs and is based in Washington State and has a long and extensive experience working with cooperatives. So hopefully we will be engaging Michael Droke in the not too distant future and get his oversight on the LCA structure for Dazzle and RPC. Any questions about that?
Does Michael have crypto or blockchain experience?
He does indeed. Any other questions or comments?
I just put a link in the chat to Michael's book.
Sweet. All right, folks. That's all we got for today. Any questions, comments, concerns from the community?
Greg, you had an AMA with the Romanian community.
Oh, thank you for reminding me, Steve. I appreciate it. Yes, indeed. On Saturday morning, bright and early, I had an AMA meeting with a Romanian, the Cryptomania Romanian community. I was delighted to see that despite their name, they are very interested in projects that aren't about crypto speculation, but are in fact about blockchain and providing the kinds of compute, storage, and more generally coordination solutions that RChain provides. There seemed to be a meeting of minds with the community in general. Very happy about the questions we got, and they seem to be very happy with the answers we were able to provide. The session took 30 minutes longer than we had budgeted, so people were very engaged, and yeah, it was very nice to chat with them. I very much enjoy the Balkan and Eastern European cultures, and especially Romanian culture. It's very delightful. Any other questions? All right, folks. Thank you so much. Really appreciated all the engagement today. Onward and upward. Please stay safe, stay warm, and we will see you on the other side.